What does it look like to live unoffendable? Why? Because I think we can. I think we actually have the ability to live unoffendable. So I want to talk to you today. And this is what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about living unoffendable. Because we live in a rough place when we carry offense. And sometimes in our life, we spend a long time carrying offense, and we don't even realize we're carrying offense. But some of you have been carrying offense way too long. Do you know what happens when you're carrying offense? After a while, when you're carrying offense, you know what will happen? Your body starts to ache. You'll be fatigued, and you don't even know why you're fatigued. Do you know why you're fatigued? You've been carrying offense too long. Things on you start to ache, and you start to feel pain in places, and you don't even know why you're feeling that pain. It's because you're carrying offense. Next thing you know, you're fatigued, your body's wearing out, you're struggling, and you're challenged in all kinds of ways. And if you're carrying offense long enough, man, I'm going to tell you, you'll start to get a little irritable and a little grouchy. Why? Because when you're tired and sore, you can get irritable and grouchy. Do you know what happens when you're carrying offense? Brian, come here a minute. You're right on the end. Come here, up here. I want you to know what happens when you're carrying offense. And you, come here, man. Just give me a big hug. Do you know what happens? When you're carrying offense, people you love can't really get close to you. Why? Because you got a wall up. Why? Because I got hurt before, and even though I want to love you, and even though I want to embrace you, I got a wall up. Because when you're carrying offense, people can't get close to you. Make sense? I promise you that. I promise you, man. Jared, come up here with Dad a minute. Okay? I'm going to really embarrass this guy. It's fun when you get the kids up here. It's just all right, you know. I need you on this side. Over, no, one of you. It doesn't. Yeah. So here's the deal, because and this is the situation, right? Because when this guy's trying to embrace me and trying to love me, right? And all of a sudden he can't get close to me, and then I see somebody else. You know what'll happen? Oh, sorry. No, sorry. Do you know what happens when you're carrying offense? The people that are close to you get hit. And you hurt them. You don't hurt the stranger out there. You'll hurt the people that are close to you when you're carrying offense. Every time that you're carrying offense, man, people around you are in jeopardy. People around you are in danger. And you're wearing yourself out. Do you know how much of the body of Christ is carrying offense? And there's got to be a place, man, where we get rid of this stuff. Because here's the deal, and Brian said something actually when he was just playing, but watch, when I went to turn to look at Jared and I hit him, he said, oh, now I'm offended. Because offended people can offend people. Did I say that out loud? Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's such a visual in this right here. And the truth of the matter is, I can look at Brian, but if I'm looking at him through offense, everything's blurry. When you're trying to look at something through offense, you don't see it properly. You don't see it the way it should be. Things are strange, and they get, the distortion is amazing. I can stand here, and as I'm walking across, just looking at the congregation right now, it's distorted because there's a myriad of stuff going on out here. Why? Because I'm looking through offense. This is good preaching. I just want you guys to see this, because the visual is so strong. And there's a place where you and I have to understand that we got to get to a place where we're not carrying offense. Can I say it? I'm going to say it. There's a lot of people preaching that are carrying offense. Just because you're preaching doesn't mean you're not carrying offense. Just because you're ministering to others doesn't mean you're not carrying offense. Carrying offense won't keep you from preaching. I can preach all day carrying this thing. I'd just be sore at the end of it. Boy, there's a sermon. Y'all follow me, right? It's a weird day when you're carrying offense. And there has to be a place where we start to examine our own heart and ask ourselves, man, why are we carrying offense? I'm going to talk to you about it. Thanks, guys. We're good. I would ask you to think with me for a minute about your life. And the question of the hour is, do you find yourself carrying offense in any area?